This is our third class on the Maamer, Keitz, Lachoshech. To be sure, I'm billing it as the second part of the second class because I gave you a class last week which went on for almost an hour, and I barely scratched the surface of the topic that I meant to develop, and it didn't make sense to keep talking. It would have been very, very, very run-on. So I divided it in two. But this is really, to a great extent, the continuation of the previous class. In the last class, we discussed a number of things. One of them was the whole issue of Ein Sof, of Oir, or godliness. And I reviewed with you a point that I've made many times over the years, that godliness is a phenomena, it's a metzias, that is not Hashem, obviously, but it's not a creation either. It doesn't have a center. Or to say it differently, its center is not itself, its center is its creator, its center is the Eibishter. Elakus is no longer Bayre, it's not Hashem, and it's not Nivra yet, it's not a creation yet. Now, there is a very important word that we need to explore in order to proceed as we discuss the concept of godliness. And that word is the word dveikus. Dveikus means attachedness. In English it's translated as cleaving. Dveikus, first of all, we discussed it at length this winter when we had this whole series of very, very involved Maimorim from Tafshin Tezvav from 1954, 55, which began with Shmini Atzeres, Tafshin Tezvav, the whole sugi of Das Elyon and Das Tachten and Yichud Elah and Yichud Tato and so on. Yesh, Ayin, Yesh. So we spent a lot of time discussing Dveikus. So for us it's a review. But nevertheless, it's very important that I state this. The meaning of the word Dveikus means where something is attached to something else, not in a way where they're bonded. When A is attached to B, so that A is associated with B because of that attachment, you wouldn't use the word dveikus. In Chassidus, in other theologies, I don't know. In Chassidus, you use the word dveikus only in such a case when A has no identity other than the fact that it represents A. In other words, dveikus is used exclusively when we talk about oir, or alakus, to be more precise. Godliness is dovuk. And the meaning of the word godliness is dovuk doesn't mean that godliness is close to Hashem. It's close to the source. It means something much more. It means that there is no reality to oir. There is nothing about the light other than the fact that it's representing its source. Dveikus means I am representing, I am bringing forward what my source is and nothing more. So dveikus has a very fine connotation. It's not a connotation of attachedness. It's a connotation of never having been separated. Dveikus connotes the entire reality of oir as that's representing moir. This is the concept of dveikus. Having said that, oir, or elakus, godliness, is dovuk in elakus, dovuk in moir. Dovuk is attached to its source. And it's attached to its source in the kind of way that the entire reality of the oir is that it's a gili hamoir. All the light does is represent its source. It has no identity unto itself other than the fact that it's reflecting its source. Our Maamer is going to develop three madregas of oir. A madrega of oir where the dveikus is begilui, a madregas of oir where the dveikus has been this battle, is in a state of helim, and a madrega of oir where the oir is basically one with the moir. So let's not waste any time. Let's go straight to the text. Now I will point out that in the previous class we had a very involved additional conversation about the words muhus and metzias. It was actually the beginning of last week's class because at that time I was intending to give it all in one shot. I'll go back to Mahus and Metzias a little bit later on. So we begin on page Shin Lamed, the second full paragraph, and we'll start again from the beginning of the paragraph. And the Rebbe Rashab, in the Maamer, which he said on Tisha B'Av Shnas Aderes, 1914, explains the Ha'ir U'ayin, the concept of light in all of its levels. Every madrega ve'ein sof, whatever level of godliness you're going to discuss, is ayin. Ayin means its identity is unknown. Why? Because it's bittul. The whole idea of Eid is that it's bottle, that it has no reality other than the moed. The achiluk b'nei Eid v'keli, when you talk about light and vessels, Eid and keli, and of course, as you know, and we've discussed many times, we hold that the keli is also a lakus. The keli is a lakus not only because the Eid goes into the keli, but the keli is a lakus mitzad atzmei, but the keli is called dveikus bilti nikeres. That you don't see how the keli is representing a lakus. You see the keli, it appears to you that the keli is representing itself. And Oid is dveikus nikeres, says the Rebbe, sha'eru ayin. In as much as light, we're talking about a lakus, godly light, godliness, has no mitzias other than the fact that it's dovok, that it's representing its source, it's ayin. Its reality is ayin, that has no self-identity. The keli hu yesh. And on the other hand, the keli, even though the keli is also dovok, because it's a dveikus bilti nikeres, the keli is also a yesh. Now we talked about this a little bit in the first class I gave you on this Maamer, in my introductory class, where I compared and contrasted this Maamer, the Rebbe's Maamer, and its source, the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab. And I think it's best that I don't repeat that here. I don't want to go away from our discussion, which is the discussion of Oid itself. So let's leave this alone and move forward. Once we establish that Oid in general, that light, godliness, ain't safe, as a whole, as a rule, is ideas ayin. In other words, it's not meant to represent itself. It's meant to represent its source. It's not meant to be a mitzias unto itself, but to be bottled to its source, says the Rebbe. But there's actually Gimel Madregas. There's 3 levels in Eir, and the 3 levels of Eir mean that even though all levels of Eir are in a state of ayin, nevertheless, the ayin of Eir has 3 dimensions. Okay, and I'm going to use my own words. The lowest level of Eir is Gilui, where the light is revealed. Now, the revelation of light is not the revelation of light. It's how light reveals the source. But nevertheless, the idea that light is revealed and reaches a keli. The second level is that the light has been bittul, that the light is in a state of helim. The light which could be revealed is hidden because something is overriding its revelation. And the third madrega of light is the way light is so one with the source that it's invisible, it's not a mitzias, like the source itself is not a mitzias. And let's read it inside. Number 1, habitl de Eir mitadatzmei. The nature of Eir is bitl as Eir is by itself. What is Eir by itself? So we cheated. In the first class I gave you, we did Shin Lamed Beis. And in the first class, I explained to you that the Rebbe's position is that the inyan of Eir b'yetzem is gilui. Eir was designed to shine. In other words, even though the whole idea of Eir is ayin and bitl, meaning to say that godliness has no identity unto itself other than that it's revealing and reflecting its source, dveikus. At the same time, it's supposed to be bottled to its source in a way that serves the source. How is the Eir serving the source in its bittul? By being gilui, by being revealed. So the Rebbe says the first bittul is habittul, the Eir mitzadatzmei. The first bittul is how Eir is revealed, and it's representing the source, and it's totally bottled. Mipnei because the light is a reflection of the source. But being a reflection of the source means much more than the idea that whatever the source has, the light has. It means that it's the source's ego that is the light's ego. The light has no mitzias unto itself other than the source, which I called in the introduction that I gave you today, dveikus. Number 2, the second bittul, this is a higher bittul. That the light really is a metzias of Eir. The light by itself is davok in a way of gilui, but something above the light, the source of the light, is affecting that the Metzias of Eid is Behis Almas, that the Metzias of Eid is not able to reveal itself. In other words, the second level means you're talking about a light whose basic condition is to shine, to reveal itself, to represent its source outward, and there is something other, something outside of the light, and in this case it's the source that's affecting that it shouldn't be able to be revealed. And then comes the third level. And the third level, V'abittel Shalei, the third bittel in Eid, is Mitzad Teva HaRotzei V'aliyah Shabei L'Kol B'Makeni. There is a nature in light to want to become one with the source. And the nature of light to want to become one with the source makes the light source-like. Okay, so let's use this word. And this ties into the conversation I had with you last time, at least a little bit. Let us afford ourselves to call Oyer a Metzias. Light is a Metzias. And again, when I say the word light, I mean Getlachkeit, godliness, elokus. Oyer is a Metzias. Light is a Metzias. What is the meaning of the word Metzias? It has a form, it has a self-definition. But Oyer is a Metzias and not a Yesh. Right? Creations are both a Metzias and a Yesh. That means that they have a form and they have a separateness. Oyer is a Metzias, but it's not a Yesh. Oyer is a Metzias. It has a form, has a definition, but its Yesh is not its own. Its Yesh is the source. It itself is Ayin. It serves its source. What is the Metzias of Oyer? Gilui. That the Eibishter designed light for a purpose. The purpose which the Eibishter designed light is to represent him outwards. So the first Madrega of Oyer is representing him as the Eibishter designed him outward. So it's at least the Metzias of Gilui. The second level is there is something obstructing the Gilui. The Oyer would want to do what it was designed to do, which is to represent its source, to reveal the Eibishter. And the Mokker is not allowing it. And the third is exactly the other aspect of Oyer. And the other aspect of Oyer is that Oyer doesn't want to be Oyer. Oyer wants to be attached to its source. And in as much as Oyer wants to be attached to its source, it is one with the source. Let me put it to you in these words. In the first class that I gave on this Maamer, I discussed in effect two ideas of bittul, two concepts of bittul. Let's give a very, very simple example. You have a teacher, right? A rebbe. And a student, a disciple is bottled to his teacher. When you speak about a student or a chassid being bottled to his teacher, bottled to his master, bottled to his rebbe, there's two basic concepts. And I use the word basic precisely because there's actually many bittles, but in general it goes on to these two criteria. The first bittel that can be between a student or a chassid and his teacher and his rebbe serves the student. A student is bottled to his teacher because he's awed by his teacher, because he's overwhelmed by his teacher, because he's in need of his teacher. And the nature of the bittul is a reflection of the student's need, of the chassid's need. When a chassid stands in front of a rebbe, he cannot speak. Why? He's humbled by the rebbe's presence. That's the chassid's interest. When a student stands in the presence of his teacher, he cannot debate with his teacher because he's humbled in the presence of his teacher. But there's a very different concept of bittul, a very different concept of bittul. What's the other concept of bittul? That a student or a chassid is bottled to his teacher, to his rebbe, to serve his teacher and to serve his rebbe. In other words, my bittul doesn't express itself in what my interest is. My bittul expresses itself in what's my teacher's interest and what's my rebbe's interest. For example, if the teacher or the rebbe wants the student to speak, the teacher of the rebbe says to the chassid, don't keep quiet, open up your mouth, psach, picha, speak, radiate, shine, represent me. These two bittles become an incredible conflict. When you appreciate the bittul that can be between a student and a chassid to his rebbe, that's the student's bittul, the nature of the bittul does not allow him to speak, does not allow him to represent his teacher, even though this is what his teacher wants. But when the student or the chassid appreciates that real bittul is not about me and my sense of inadequacy, my sense of humility in the presence of my master, but how I can serve him. If the teacher wants you to teach, you teach. If the chassid wants you to speak, if the Rebbe wants you to speak, you speak. This is the duality in Oyer. This is the duality in Oyer. And this is really the chiddush, I believe, of this Maamer, of our Rebbe's Maamer, to a considerable degree over the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, which I spoke about in the first class and I'm repeating now. What is Oyer? What is godliness? Oyer is supposed to, Oyer reflects, Oyer represents Hashem. So what does Oyer want? What does Oyer want? And the answer is Oyer is bittul. Oyer is bittul to moyer. The light, the godliness is nullified, is bittul in the presence of its source, Hashem. But there's two bittels to the bittul of Oyer. One bittul of Oyer has to do with the teva ha'oyer. Oyer's interest. How is Oyer bittul to its source? Oyer's bittul to its source is what Oyer wants out of its source. And what does Oyer want out of its source? To be attached to the source. And in as much as Oyer is bittul to its source, and it wants to be attached to its source, it's serving itself. It's a complete state of bittul, it's serving itself. This is its interest, to be dveikus. On the other hand, if the Eibishter, if the source says to the earth, shine, light, represent me, and the light actually does so the light is actually going away from bittul. The earth is saying, I'm going to be less bittul to my source, less bittul to my Moed, less bittul to my Rav, less bittul to my Rebbe, and I'm actually going to be a Metzias, I'm going to shine. But I'm doing it not because this is my interest, but because this is the Moed's interest. And that's the difference between the first and second levels of Oyer that our Maamer describes, and the third level of Oyer that our Maamer describes. And you should know that in a very, very big scheme, this is the difference between Tayu and Tikkun. Tayu is also a bittul, but the bittul of Tayu serves the Oyer, and the bittul of Tikkun serves it serves the Eibishter, it serves Atzma, it serves Hashem. The first madrega of Oyer is bittul, how it shines. Why? That's the will of God. The second madrega of Oyer would shine, something outside of it is preventing from shining. But naturally it wants to fulfill what the source wants it to fulfill, which is to shine. It's just quieted by something outside of itself. The highest madrega of Oyer, ironically, is bittul to the Eibishter the most, but the bittul of the highest madrega of Oyer is serving the Oyer. It's not serving the Moyer. It's serving itself, it's not serving its source. In other words, in this case, the highest madrega of bittul, in a way, is less than the lower madregas of bittul. Again, if you remember what I told you in my first class, we read Perek Zayin of the Maamer, and the Rebbe used the expressions bittul naila yeser versus pnimi yes yeser, higher and deeper. The highest madrega of Oyer is so bittul to its source it can't even shine. That's a higher bittul, but it's a self-serving bittul. The lower madregas of Oyer that actually do shine, they're outside of the source, is tifer. It's deeper because it's fulfilling the purpose of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's fulfilling the Eibishter's will. So what's the third madrega of Ein Sof? The third madrega of Ein Sof is that Oyer doesn't want to shine. And if you remember the discussion that we had in the first class, I explained to you that in order for the world to exist, everything has to go against its nature. Oyer has to go against its nature and be gilui, because the teva is lekolol b'moyer. And the keli has to go against its nature and to be in a state of aliyah, even though ruach habehema hi hayeredes lamata. So the nature of Oyer is to not want to shine. That's the third madrega. The idea that Oyer does shine, which is the lower madregas, is actually fulfilling the purpose of Oyer, which is to be begal the Eibishter to the world. To say this in different words, this is what you have in the Rebbe Siches, and you have it also in other places. You have it in Ranat, where Eid and Keli are discussed. Bal korcha chata chai, bal korcha chata meis. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos that a person lives against his wishes, and a person dies against his wishes. So of course the question becomes, if a person wants to live, then he doesn't want to die. If a person doesn't want life, then he doesn't want to live. How could they both be al korchach? How could you say twice you're forced to live and you're forced not to live? And the answer is the teva of the neshama is to want to go back to Gan Eden. The neshama doesn't want to exist. But the Eibishter has a kavanah, Eibishter has a purpose. And the purpose is that the neshama should be in a goof. And because the neshama is sensitive to the purpose, therefore, it wants to live. So there's two drives in the neshama. There's the drive of the neshama, which is the teva of the neshama. And there's the drive of the neshama, which is the mahus of the neshama. There's the drive of the neshama, which has to do with what the neshama is by nature, which is I want to be one with my source. And there's the drive of the neshama, which goes against its nature to fulfill its purpose, which is to be in a goof. And the same is true here. The highest madrega of Oid is Oid doesn't want to exist. Oid wants to be one with its source to the extent that it has no mitzias. And the Oid, on this level, that doesn't want to exist, is, for lack of words, it's moir shaba'id. It's as Oid is the source, even though it's Oid. In other words, it's not bottled to the moir only. It's as if it is moir itself. Now, the explanation for this is on page Shin Lamed Aleph. And I am going to skip, I'm going to go ahead. And I want to show you this explanation inside. It's the middle paragraph on page Shin Lamed Aleph. And it's the middle of the paragraph. It's the fourth line. At the very end of the fourth line, it says, and I'm reading it now. V'ikir habitul de'ed bitul legamri. When we say that oid is altogether bottle. And in this case, we're not talking about oid bottle in fulfilling its purpose. We're talking about oid being bottle in fulfilling its nature, which is to want to be one with its source. Bitul legamri, hu habitul shemitzad harotze shalei likolabam keder. It's light's desire to be one with the source. Light's desire to be one with the source is like the chassid's desire to be one with his Rebbe. And the bittul is exceedingly high, but it's serving the chassid, it's not serving the Rebbe. Serving the Rebbe is what does the Rebbe want from me, not what I get from the Rebbe. And this madreg of oir and its bittul is serving the oir. And now comes the explanation. The kivin sherotze negeya leyetzem mitziyus. The will of oir to be in the source affects the very essence of what oir is, in the language that we're going to have later in the Maamer. Not just the Metzias ha'oir, but the Mahus ha'oir, not just the Gili ha'oir, but the Yetzem ha'oir. So it's Kepirosh ha'Baal Shem Tov. It is the Baal Shem Tov teacher. This is one of those wonderful teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, and of course originally it's at Psad Yagon, it's at Asag, at least it's quoted in the name of the Asag. It says in the Pasuk, Srafim Eim Dem Imalei, which means that the Malachim of Elam Abriya, Srafim are standing higher than him. Higher than the Yebish Tekayach. And Loi is explaining Kabbalah Chassidus goes on Zodat Tzilas. And of course the question becomes, how could Malachim or El Mabriya stand above Elokus, which is Zodat Tzilas? And the answer is, Shal Yadei Haratzin Shalahem Likolol Be'edin Seif. Because the Malachim want to go back to their source. And the source of the Malachim is in Elam, is in Atzilus, in Bina of Atzilus, which is higher than Zav Atzilus. So they say, this is the famous quote from the Baal Shem Tov, B'mekeimesh eretzeinei shal adam, B'mekeimesh eretzeinei shal adam, Machshavtei shal adam, shamu nimtza. Where one wishes to be, they are. So the Malachim are Nelam Abriya, but they want to go back to their source, which is 3 levels above them, Kadosh, 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 which is Bina of Atzilus. Bina is higher than Zadat Atzilus. So because of their desire to go back to the source, even though they're in Briya, they're identified as Ein Dem Imaloi, standing above Vav, above Midas of Atzilus. So the Baal Shem Tov, this is the famous quote, the source of this quotation. Is this Teres Baal Shem Tov and the Pasuk Sraf Memi Ma'alei, and the Rebbe is using it for Oyer. Oyer is a Metzias. In other words, Oyer is not the source. Godliness is not God, it's a Metzias, it's outside of the source. And on the lowest levels, it's Gili. So putting aside the fact that Gili has an advantage that it's serving Hashem, all Oyer wants is to not be Oyer. The way the Eibishter created Oyer is that all it wants is to be a non-Metzias. And the want of Oyer to be a non-Metzias equals its being a non-Metzias. When Oyer has a ratzon to be kolol in the mud, when light wishes to be included in the source, it's not bottled to the source, it is the source. I'm reading it inside. Through their will to be included in Erein Seif, Heim Kamei Nimtsoyim Eim Dim Sham. It's as if these malachim are already one with Ein Seif. V'yal derech Ratzon ha'adam, the will of a human being. Again, this is all the Teres Abba Shem Tov. The Malkam Shedetzei Shal Adam, where one wishes to be. Sham hu nimtza, he's already there. V'yeseidim idu shasham hu nimtza kulei, the Baal Shem Tov says he's there in his entirety. Lachein, therefore, ayadei shereitza likolu b'mekeri. When light wishes to be included in the source, hu k'mei kolu b'mekeri, it's already included in the source. The oir's rotzen, not to be oir, but to be moir, makes it into moir. V'lachein, and therefore, habitul shaloi, the madrega of oir, that's being oir in the teva ha'oir, rather than being oir in terms of serving the Eibishter and what the Eibishter wants from oir. So bitzad ha'rotzen likolol b'mekeri, because of its want to be included in the source, hu bitul lagamri, it's totally bottle, because it's as if it's in the source. Al derech habitul de'eira kol b'moir, like light that never left the source. So this is complicated, right? And I don't want it to be complicated, but it is complicated, because it turns out that the lowest madrega of oir has a maila, and the highest madrega of oir has a chasar. The lowest madrega of oir is maila, is that doing what the Eibishter wants. The highest madrega of oir is chasar, is that it's doing what it wants, not what the Eibishter wants. But putting aside this aspect of the mahus of oir versus the mitzias of oir, you have these three levels in Ein Sof. You have a level of Ein Sof that exists as oir. It's davuk, it's attached to its source, it's reflecting its source, it's revealing its source, it's serving its source in the fact that it's representing the source, but in representing the source, it's in a state of giloy, and it reaches a keli, it's a metzias of oir. There's an in-between level, a middle level, which is actually the same as the first level, but there's something which is preventing it from being in a state of giloy, and then there's the highest level. The highest level is the oir that's following its teva. And the teva of oir is to want to be in the source. So the Baal Shem Tov says, when one wishes to be someplace, they're already there. So the oir, which wishes to be in the source, is already in the source. And it's bittul to the source as if it's the source itself. So now, let's collect ourselves. We have to move forward. We have to learn the Maamer. I have to go on from this point. In order for me to go on from this point in a most efficient way, I have to a little bit cut myself some slack. I got to loosen up my string here. I got to relax a little bit. What I will do from now, from this point forward, for the next handful of lines, which is going to be the next handful of minutes, is discuss these three levels of oir without the duality, without the complexity that I just mentioned about two types of bittul. We're going to forget all that. We are going to start this conversation again, and we're simply going to state that there's three levels of oir. The lowest level of oir is a metzias of oir. That means light, dveikus, representing its source, has no reality other than that it reflects its source, but it's in a state of gilu. There's a second level of oir, which is also a metzias of oir, but the metzias is bittul because it feels the source. The source does not allow the light to shine, it humbles it, it quiets it. The highest madrega of oir is the maximum bittul. This is not how oir has any metzias. This is how oir has only one interest, to be attached to the source. And because it wants to be in the source, it's already in the source, and in as much as it's in the source, it's like the source itself. So what happens now is we forget about the fact that there is a hechad and a tifir. You know, the Rebbe is going to say it later in the Maamer. I told it to you earlier in the Maamer because I wanted to make it simpler for you. So forget about the hechad and the tifir, okay? Now we're going to simply assume there's three levels of Ein Sof. The lowest level of Ein Sof is a gili and a metzias. The middle level of Ein Sof is oir, which is in theory a gil and a metzias, but something is preventing its metzias, preventing its gil from being manifest because it's feeling something above itself. And the highest madrega of oir is its desire to be one with the source, makes it one with the source. That oir has no metzias whatsoever. And now we continue reading the Maamer. We're on page Shin Lamed, third paragraph, fourth line. And the question becomes, Hare, we established three levels of Ein Sof, where the highest madrega of Ein Sof, that it's so bottled to the moed, it's like the moed itself, And the lowest madrega of Ein Sof is where the Ein Sof is actually in a state of gilui. It's reflecting the source, it's revealing the source, but it's in a state of dvekus, meaning to say it has no reality other than that it's reflecting its source. Even the lowest level of Eir, that's called the Metzias of Eir, that reflects and reveals what a lakus is, is also the fact that Eir has no Metzias unto itself, and all it is Gili Amor, to reflect its source. And as I've explained to you on many occasions in the past, this is not a bitl hayesh. Oyer does not start off as something and become bottle. It's the bitl b'metzias. Oyer's entire reality is its source. And all it does is represent and reveal what the source is. And as a consequence, the lowest madrega of Oyer is also bottle b'mehusa. It's also bottle b'metzias. And accordingly the question becomes, what's the difference between the lowest level of Eir, Shein Yanehu Gili Hamoed, that it reveals the source, which we're calling Metzias of Eir, Lezeh Shenirgesh Beimakere, when comparing it to the middle level, where even though it's a Metzias of Eir, because it feels the source, there's a Chesaron and the Gili can't be revealed. Gam Tzarech Lav, and a second question is, the Mashakaso Bahamaimer, the Maamer says, this light, this godliness, which by itself is a Metzias that's reflecting a lakus and a way of dvekus, when it feels its source, it becomes battle. Says the Rebbe, it's a bittul of insignificance. It's a bittul of being inconsequential. It's not a bittul of being nichol in the moed. It's a bittul of being klochshiv. The difference would be a bittul of klochshiv is like ukum hu kodem ilas ilas. That's what the Rebbe Rashab speaks about in Aderes. Or it's shrage betia ramai ahane. In the presence of a greater light, a lesser light is nothing. In other words, a bittul of chetenius hakeser. The fact that the lowest level of Ein Sof, which is a Metzias and is a Gili, has no Metzias unto itself, other than that, that's reflecting its source, is arguably bittul gadol yaser, a greater state of bittul, than the bittul of a light, who by itself would be Gilui, but because there's a higher presence, its Gilui is nullified, is quieted. The bittul of the middle madrega of Eir is rak b'negel l'chashivusei, that compared to something higher, its worth has been diminished. She'ein lerech v'shivas l'gab b'mekeda, compared to the source, it has little worth. But ve'ein zenegel yatzem mitziyusei, in as much as that light is by itself, it's the very same thing as the lowest madrega of Eir, which is in Yanegili. The Maamer seems to indicate the very fact that the light perceives the source is greater than the level of light which wants to be revealed, but is not able to be revealed because the source is not letting it, is higher than the level of light which wants to be revealed and is actually revealed. Because a bittul the kloch hashiv, and the Rebbe says, I want to understand this. If the lowest level of light is that it reveals the source, and the middle level of light also, in essence, is revealing the source, but that there's something above itself which is preventing that revelation, how is that higher? Isn't the idea of revealing the source the ultimate thing, the highest thing? In short, and in other words, how do we understand the philosophical difference between these three madregas of Ein Sof? That the lowest madrega of Ein Sof, and it's considered the lowest, is a Metzias of Eir because it's Gilui. The middle madrega of Ein Sof is that it also is a Metzias of Eir and Gilui, but its Metzias and Gilui is being prevented by being Margesh Makere. And the third madrega of Ein Sof, because it wants to be in the source, is as though it's in the source, and in that level the Eir has no Metzias whatsoever, it's only the Moir. And in order to continue now, I need to go back to the introduction that I gave you in the beginning of the previous class, what I'm calling the first half of this shiur. And that is, if you can remember, if you can recall, I explained to you that there are two terms, Metzias and Mehus. Metzias means the form of something, and Mehus means the substance of something. Now, in the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus, when we usually use the word Metzias and Mehus, we use the word Metzias for creations. this table, my body, your machine that you're listening to me on, or seeing me and listening to me on, and your body are a metzias. What does that mean? They are proof that Hashem exists. Every physical thing, every spiritual thing, beginning with the beginning of Elam Abriya, is a metzias that represents the Eibishter. Your essence, your center, my essence, my center is myself. In physical creations and in spiritual creations, and Elam is biyah. Elokus is not revealed, Elokus is hidden. But everything that exists, its existence is representative of the Eibishter. But it only tells you that God exists, it doesn't tell you what God is. The word mahus is used in Elokus, godliness, which is basically Atzilus. Because Atzilus does not only represent the Eibishter, it reflects what the Eibishter is. In Atzilus is felt the mahu, the mahus of Elokus. And again, if you remember the discussion that we had last time, I explained it to you by discussing the word ratzon and oinig, where the mashal of pleasure, the mashal of the light, represents the richness of the neshama and represents the richness of the Ein Sof. In the lower worlds, all we know is that God created us. In the higher worlds, we have a sense of what godliness is, because that's what Ein Sof means. Ein Sof, godliness, is not only proof that Hashem exists, it's a revelation of what Hashem is. It's the experience of Hashemliness. So normally, classically, typically, we would use the word, the Metzias of Elokus, to represent the lower worlds. The lower worlds prove the Metzias of Elokus, and Atzilus would be the Mahus of Elokus. But that's only true when you're talking about godliness versus worldliness. But if you go up a notch, and you start to talk about Moed versus Oed, the source versus the light. In other words, instead of discussing godliness versus worldliness, you discuss, for lack of words, and I'm saying it in Yiddish because I'm simply uncomfortable saying it in English, Elaka versus Elokus, Got versus Getlach, which is a lashon in the Maamer. God versus godliness. So when you go up that level, the same thing, the language is the same, but on a very, very different level. When you talk about Hashem versus Hashemliness, Hashem becomes the Mahus, and Hashemliness becomes the Metzias. In other words, when you're comparing godliness to worldliness, worldliness is the Metzias of Elokus, and godliness is the Mahus of Elokus. If you experienced Atzilus, you would experience what it feels like to be close to the Eibishter. But when you compare Oyer to Moed, you compare the light to the source, the light is the Metzias, and the source is the Mahus. Now, how so? How do we understand this? And the reason this is, how so, is a very, very big question, very difficult to answer, because the Rebbe in our Maamer is going to be discussing this. What's going to follow in this little paragraph and a half that we're about to read is exactly this, that the source is Mahus, and the light is Metzias. In other words, godliness is the Metzias of God, and Hashem himself is the Mahus of Hashem, for lack of words, but there's no explanation, there's no hezbed. The Rebbe just simply states the facts. Okay, and I'm repeating myself again. Maybe I'm doing it for myself. I hope I'm doing it for you. That we normally use the word Metzias and Mahus in the context of reality. That means not Hashem, what he created. And relatively speaking, the lower worlds where there is Yeshus is only Metzias of Elokus. The higher worlds, Atzilus, where there is Ayin, where there is Elokus, is Mahus. But when you compare the Oyer to the Moed, the light to the source, you again would use the word Metzias. Elokus is the Metzias, and the Eibishter is the Elokah, is the Mahus. So how would you understand this? How would you understand this? And of course, I don't have words, because the Maamer doesn't offer any words. So I'm going to tell you something b'derech hefshet. I'm going to explain this to you b'derech hefshet. I don't know if this is true, but I think it's true. I wouldn't say it otherwise. And I hope I'm not misleading you. Okay? There's a story in Tanakh with Eliyahu Hanavi, which is one of the Haftarahs, and I forget which one it is. Maybe it's the Haftarah of Eliyahu Bar HaKarmel, which you read Pashas Kisisa. Maybe it's a different one, where Eliyahu runs away because Achav is trying to kill him, And he goes to Har Chayriv, he goes to Har Sinai, and he has a vision. And he sees what we call a Merkava. He sees a chariot. That means he has a prophetic vision. And of course, a prophetic vision means that there is a certain form, there's a certain image. But this form that he's seeing is prophetic, it's not physical, it's an inspired visualization that's revealing to him through this form, through this image, he's having an experience of a Elokus, which is what a Chayze is, what a Navi is, what a Raya is, what Nevuah is, basically. And the Pasuk describes the vision in steps. That he sees Ruach. Ruach, I guess, means a tornado, a twister. Then he sees Rash. Rash, I think, means an earthquake. And then he sees an Eish, and I'm going to assume that Eish means a volcano. In other words, he sees images that are familiar to him, which is, of course, one of the keys in a Nevuah. You have to know something that you can only see what you know, otherwise it's not seeing it. That's representing a Elokus. So the Pasuk says that there was a Ruach, Loi beruach Hashem. The Ruach was not Hashem. Achar Ruach Rash, there was a Rash, Loi berash Hashem. And Achar Rash, Eish. After the Rash there was an Eish, Loi be'eish Hashem. And then it says, V'achar Eish keil d'mama daka. After the tornado and the earthquake and the volcano, there was a silence. And that curled mamadaka, that's where Elokus is. That silent voice, that's where the Eibishter is. That quiescence is representative of Elokus. And of course, this pasuk, these psukim and this mashal are found in many, many Maamer Hasidus that are developing and explaining it. I'm sure you understand that I would never come up with this mashal myself. There's a Maamer from the Friedrich Rebbe al Derech HaAvodah. There's also in Himshech Ayin Beis Chelik Sheni, on a very, very haskaladik way, the same idea. What is the point? The point is that when we talk about Hashem, when you and I talk about Hashem, we're really never talking about Hashem. We're always talking about relating to Hashem. In other words, we're always talking to Hashem as Hashem has a relationship with me. Because what Hashem is, I have no idea of, and I'll never have any idea of. What Hashem is, I'm not. So when we speak of the words Metzias and say, I look at this table and I know Hashem, I look at this world, look at this universe and I know Hashem, and I say that this universe tells me about the Metzias of Hashem, it tells me that Hashem is, or it tells me the Mahus of the Metzias, it tells me many things that Hashem must be, but it doesn't give me a sense of what it feels like, the experience of being Hashem. That's not the word Metzias per se, it's the Metzias that I perceive. My perception of the Metzias as the Eibishter is. If I then say that there's something called Mahus, where you can experience the Eibishter. In other words, where you not only see evidence of Hashem, or you not only see evidence of the greatness of Hashem, but you experience what it is to be Hashemliness, to be Hashemli, and we call that Mahus. You're still not experiencing Hashem. Why are you not experiencing Hashem? Hashem can't be experienced. You're experiencing the light of Hashem. You're experiencing the Gili of the Eibishter. The Eibishter makes His presence known to you through oil. And if you were to be a Neshama D'Atzilas, if you would be a true Eisik B'Kabbalah, you would be able to experience Getlichkeit, godliness, and you would experience what it feels like to be a Elokus, or to what it feels like to be Ein Seif. And again, as I explained to you in the last shir, 2 shiurim ago, the mashal with us the experience of Tainug, when a person experiences his own neshama, the infinity of his neshama, and it's an incredibly uplifting and incredibly rich. In that experience, there's everything. There's intelligence, there's emotion, there's senses, there's many, many things. And you're experiencing it as a simple delight. It's not broken down. That's a mashal. And the nimshal is that experiencing godliness, which we experience the Ein Seif in a single experience. You're not experiencing how Ein Seif is Chochmah, and how Ein Seif is Chesed, and how Ein Seif is Riyah, how Ein Seif is Shmiya. You're experiencing how Ein Seif is Ein Seif, which is called the richness of Elokus, the Tainug of Elokus, and it's therefore called the Mahus of Elokus. But remember that the very idea that you're experiencing a lakus is not what a lakus is. It's your experience of a lakus. So how does it feel like to be Hashem? The answer is, it doesn't feel like anything. Not it doesn't feel like anything because it's not real. It doesn't feel like anything because it's not relating to anything other than itself. That's what silence is. Quiescence, silence doesn't mean nothing. Quiescence and silence means nothing that's relating to something other than self. It's silence. You know, you have the famous Hasidic word that on Chanukah darf man hören, what the Lichterlach erzählen. You have to listen to what the candles are saying. But in order to hear what the candles are saying, you have to be very, very quiet. How quiet? Totally silent. No, if you're completely quiet, what do you hear? You hear nothing. But you hear how in nothing there is everything. And therefore you have a very, very interesting adaptation of language. On the level where we describe a relationship between the person and the Eibishter, we say, relating to Hashem through the world is Metzias. Relating to Hashem through Eid is Mahus. But there's another dimension. When a person is relating to the Eibishter as another, and when a person is not relating to Hashem as another. And here again we use the same words. Elokus is Metzias. Godliness is the Metzias of Hashem. Why is godliness the Metzias of Hashem and not the Mahus of Hashem? Because it's how Hashem is coming to you in form of the experience of Tainug or whatever the case may be. As opposed to when one is one with Maamer and one feels the source, he's experiencing the silence, the nothing of what the source is. And the only way to experience the nothing of what the source is to be one with the source. And this is what follows. This is what we're about to discover. This is what we're about to find out. And let me repeat the issue, and then we're going to proceed. Then we're going to learn it in time. Inside. The issue is, we have 3 levels of Eid. The lowest level of Eid, which I'm calling the Metzias of Eid, is Gilia, how it reveals the Eibush, it represents the Eibush, the Dvekas, which is what Hashem wants light to do, to speak on His behalf. The middle Madrega of Eid is similar to the first Madrega of Eid, but there's something outside of it which is quieting it, not letting it shine. The highest Madrega of Eid, all it wants to do is be one with the source. And because all it wants to be one with the source, it's as though it's already one with the source. And the question of the Maamer basically is, the lowest level of Eid arguably is maximally bottle. If the lowest Madrega of Eid is maximally bottle, what's the difference between one Madrega of Eid and the second Madrega of Eid and the third Madrega of Eid? And the answer is going to be as follows. That normally we speak about worldliness versus godliness. Worldliness is called Metzias, godliness is called Mahus. But now we're going to be speaking godliness versus God, versus the source. And we're again going to use the words Metzias and Mahus. And that when Eid is in a state of Gilui, it's bottle only by Metzias, not by Mahus. And when the Eid is one with the source, it's bottle not only it's Metzias, it's bottle and it's Mahus, meaning to say, not only is it completely bottle to the Eibush, that it's not even an experience of bittul, it's a quiescence of bittul. It's a quiet of bittul. Now let's read it inside. The explanation I'm going to give is famous. And he refers you to a couple of obscure Maimarim. You look in footnote 20 in Samach Tes and in Samach Vov. It goes like this. The Hagam. Even though on the one hand, light is exactly like the source, and it's a total reflection of the source. At the same time, Kivan Shahama'id, who moved on the source is separated from the light, because Shahama'id ain't a Makir La'ed. You can never call the source a source for light. Verak Shehu Nimtza Mimenu. The light comes from the source by itself. The concept here is that the long version of this is that Hasidus discusses, you know what, I'll put it in these words. Can anybody give you everything about themselves? Can I give you all of me? Can you give me all of you? Is there any way everything I am can be communicated to you? And the simple answer to that question is impossible. No, it can't be done. Why? Because whatever I'm giving you is a piece. If I'm giving you an idea, it's not a feeling. If I'm giving you a feeling, it's not an idea. If I'm giving you one idea, it's not a second idea. If I'm giving you a second idea, it's not a first idea, and so on. which means no human being can communicate to somebody else what they are by themselves. It's impossible. The operative word for this system is shefa, mashpia, hashpoa, mushpa. That when A is giving something to B, proactively he's giving a piece of what he is, he's not giving all of what he is. But Chassidus says there is one way everything that A is can be communicated to B. But there's only one way. There's a second way, which is a different conversation, it's not for today. But classically, basically, there's another way that A can be giving to B, and he can give all of himself. And that's only when he doesn't try. The moment A is making an effort to give something from himself to B, even though he's involved, which is very deep and meaningful, he's giving only an aspect. The only way you could communicate all of yourself to somebody else is in the idea that's called Chochmas Adam Toir Panav. Chochmas Adam Toir Panav means someone looks at your face, sees everything about you. On a person's face is written all of them. Everything you are is written on your face. Now, most people, most of the time, look at other people's faces and see very little. But we all understand, perhaps intuitively, that this is true. That the face of a person does reflect everything about the person. You have to just know how to process it, how to be sensitive to it. You have to keep quiet enough to be able to hear it, to use an illusion that I mentioned before. But the face of a person does reveal everything about them. But there's a very, very significant limitation. You can't give it. It has to happen by itself. The moment you're giving, it's not everything. And if it's everything, you cannot give it. In other words, hashpah is limited. But when there is a communication from one to another, b'derech oed, there's a huge havdalah between the oed and the moed. In other words, when somebody looks at you, and assuming that they are very, very deep chacham, and by looking at your face, they can read everything about you, the one thing that they're not getting is you yourself. You're not giving yourself to them. They're taking you. They're looking at your countenance like having a picture. A picture is the perfect likeness of the original, but it's not the original at all. Oid is exactly like the moed. The light is exactly like the source. But the one thing that oid does not have is the moed itself. Because there's no way for all of what the source is to be communicated b'derech shefa. If one is giving, they're giving something limited. And if all of themselves is being communicated, one of the words that Rebbe used here is the word havdalah. Oid is moved off from the source. In other words, when you speak about oid and moed, there's two extremes. On the one hand, the oid is exactly like the moed. On the other hand, the oid is only ha'ara. There's nothing of the moed in the oid. And the same is true of itself. Now, this is a bit complicated, or very, very complicated, because there's a very big difference between oid and moed lamata and oid and moed labayla. Because oid and moed lamata is behechrech, oid and moed lamayla is beratzen, or gilir etzenis. But having raised the controversy, let's leave it alone. And just like you say that the countenance of a person can reflect everything about that person only when it happens without it being communicated. So Kvayachal Eid Ein Sof is a reflection of the moed. But the only way Eid can be a reflection of the moed is if it happens memela, but not b'derech hashpah. So the Rebbe says, Lochein. Therefore, 3 lines in the top of page Shin Lamed Aleph. Zesha Eid Megales HaMoed. It may be true that the lowest level of Eid reveals the source. And remember, the lowest level of Eid is in a state of dveikus. The lowest madrega of Eid Ein Sof has no identity other than the fact that it's reflecting the Eibishter. And it's revealing the Eibishter. But it's revealing the Eibishter. Or to say it differently, it's revealing the Eibishter in a way that a keli, another, can experience the Mehus of Elokus. Says the Rebbe, Hu rak mitzias hamod v'lei Mehus. The Eid Ein Sof, which reveals to the world, reveals to worldliness, what we call the Mehus of Elokus. The Mehus of Elokus that Eid reveals to a keli is only the mitzias of the moed. What Hashem is not at all present there. Because the Mehus of the moed can't be revealed. The Mehus of the moed can't be put into a keli. It cannot have a relationship with anything outside of itself. So there's an irony about Eid. Eid reveals the source. And in the way Eid Ein Sof reveals the source, we say that through the Eid Ein Sof you can know the Mehus of Elokus, which means you can experience what it feels like to be godliness. You can't experience what it feels like to be God because his Metzias has no feel, has no experience. But Eid Ein Sof, the mashal for Eid Ein Sof again is Tainug. But even though Oir, which is usually called the Mehus of Elokus, when you compare it to the Moed, is only Metzias. The godliness which can be known compared to what Hashem is Metzias and not Mehus. Ela she'af al pi kein, at the same time, mitzad dveikusei shel ha'oyer b'moed, there is a possibility that the oyer should be on a higher level. In other words, we just discussed the first level of Ein Sof, the lowest level of Ein Sof. What is the lowest level of Ein Sof? The lowest level of Ein Sof is that it reveals the Eibishter. And again, when you talk about it in the context of worldliness, the whole idea of Ein Sof is that through oyer you can know the Mahus of Moed. Through the light of Ein Sof you could experience what Ein Sof is, what godliness is. But when you know the Mahus of Oyer, it's only the Metzias of Moed. You cannot know what the source is, because the source is not a Gili at all, can't be experienced. Says the Rebbe, but then there's a second Madrega. What's the second Madrega? The second Madrega is that this Oyer, which is in a state of Gilui, which is reflecting the source and revealing the source. And in as much as it's reflecting the source and revealing the source, you have the Mahus of Elokus on a level that you're able to experience. That oyer could also become bottle. And he explains that mitzad veikusei shel ha'oyer b'hamoyer, when this light attaches itself to the source, nirgash bei, it experiences, it feels gam mahus ha'moyer, the mahus, the substance of the source, which is quiet, which is quiescence, shemoved dom ha'oyer, which is removed from oyer, if einem is galabei, and the light does not reveal it. So the light loses its metzias. It becomes bottle in its metzias. In other words, I'll explain this soon. The metzias ha'eru gilui. The metzias of Eir, the form of Eir, is supposed to reveal the source, Hamoy. But inasmuch as the Eir is gilui Hamoy, the Eir itself is mahus when compared to worldliness, but it's metzias when compared to Moy. But Vayadesha Nirgash Bey, when the Eir senses Shahamoyer Mahusa Hamoyer, that the source is Lamaila Megilui, doesn't allow for a Gilui. Vishahagilu Ein Lei Erech Klochashav Gabi Hamoyer, the idea of light, of godliness being revealed, is inconsequential, is nothing compared to how it is in the source. Whom is battle mim to you say its form or its revelation becomes battle. In other words, how do we say this? There's a dichotomy here. There's a built-in problem. If you could know it, it's not the truth. If it's the truth, you cannot know it. Now, we're talking here on a level of Elokus, right? What you could know of Elokus is not the truth. And what's the truth of Elokah, even Elokus cannot reveal. In other words, you and I would normally have this discussion in our reality. What's our reality? Our reality is that the center of my world is me, and I think about myself, and I'm a selfish creature, and I choose to serve the Eibishter. So then you would say, what I could know about the Eibishter isn't the truth, and what's the truth of the Eibishter I cannot know, because all I can know about the Eibishter is proof that Hashem exists, but not how you can experience what Hashemliness is. We're having this discussion on a much higher level. We're not talking about world versus godliness. We're talking about godliness versus the source. And we're saying that godliness cannot know emes. But the emes cannot be revealed. So you have sort of two choices. Choice A is to reveal godliness, and choice A is to pursue the truth. But there is no way to reveal the truth. Because if it's the truth, it can't be revealed, and if it's revealed, it can't be the truth. So the word we use for revealed is metzias, and the word we use for the truth is mahus. So oir's metzias is gilui. Oir reveals the Eibishter. And in terms of atzilus, in terms of elam yenim, it's the mahus of Elokus, but it's the revealable mahus of Elokus. And the revealable mahus of Elokus is the metzias of Moed. Then there is the other choice. The other choice is to relate to the truth. And if you relate to the truth, you're relating to Moed. If you're relating to the truth, then it can't be in a state of Gilui. And the Rebbe says that's the difference between the first level of Ein Sof and the second level of Ein Sof. The first level of Ein Sof is the Metzias of Eid. It reveals the source, period. The second level of Ein Sof's Inyan is also to reveal the source. But it knows that there is a source. And that if it would know the source, it couldn't be revealed, and that quiets it. So its basic condition is that it's a Metzias of Elokus. It reveals the Eibishter. But because Nirgash B'Makedi, it has a sense that if it would be closer to the truth, it couldn't be in a state of revelation, it becomes unrevealed. But this is only the first level and the second level. Because the first level is actual Gilui, and the second level is potential Gilui. And you'll see soon alternative language for the same. But now let's continue to read the second paragraph on page Shin Lamed Aleph. El Hashem Yikol Makom, to be sure. Even this second idea. Now let me repeat what I said, right? You have two choices. You could either reveal the Eibishter or be involved in the truth of the Eibishter. You can't have both. If you're revealing the Eibishter, it's not the truth. If it's the truth, you can't reveal it. So the first level of Eid reveals the Eibishter. The second level of Eid wants to reveal the Eibishter, but the knowledge that it's not the truth quiets it. So the Rebbe says this second level, that abitul the Eid Aidesha Nirgad Remakeda, that lights ideas to reveal the source. But because it senses that if it would be closer to the truth, it couldn't be revealed, Eini Bittul Agamri is not total Bittul. The Kivan She'ed V'Hamokeh Shalayim Shnei Yonim. After all, the light by itself is Metzias, it's Gilui, and the source is something other which is bittling it. V'Ha'ed Hu Michutz L'Makeda, the light is outside the source. And therefore, the fact that the light feels the source, and therefore is not being a metzias, is not being revealed, it's relating to something outside of itself, namely the Yebish, the source. And therefore, in Zenigel, that's a mitziyusi. Oiris metzias is gilui. Oiris muhus is bittul. But in the muhus of oir, which is bittul, there's two parts. There is the bittul of the Metzias of Eir, and there's the bittul of the Mahus of Eir. In other words, there is the idea that light wants to shine and it can't. And there's the idea that light has no ability to shine. The second level is a light that wants to shine and it can't, because it's bottled from something higher. Therefore, the second level of Eir, that it is bottled because it knows that if it were closer to the truth, it couldn't shine, is rakbeis pashtas shalei. It's only its inability to be revealed. So you would say it's not transformed. So the way you would put it is as follows. When you use the language of Metzias and Mahus, so Gili of Ein Sof is Metzias. When you're Mavatal, the Metzias, you're saying that the Metzias of Eid is bottle, but the Mahus of Eid is still separate. And the highest Madrege, not only the Metzias of Eid is bottle, but that the Mahus of Eid is Moir. And therefore the Rebbe concludes, Ve'ikir habitul de Eid. The highest level of Bittul Eid. Bittul Lagamri is a Bittul Mitzat HaRotzeh Shalei, is the Bittul because the light wants to be in the source, because when light wants to be in the source, it's as though it's in the source, and if light wants to be in the source, it's as though it's in the source, so then the Bittul of the Mahus of Eid is in its Mahus and not as in Metzias. Now I read this second half of this paragraph, so I'm not going to reread it, but I'm going to restate it. Okay? Again, why is this so confusing? What's frustrating me? And I hope it's frustrating you, because that means you're getting it. We always called Oir Mahus. We always call Oir Mahus, all over Chasidus. And the reason we call Oir Mahus is that when you experience Oir, you experience godliness. All of a sudden here we're calling Oir Metzias. Not because Oir is not the Mahus, but because the Gilui, the level of godliness which can be revealed compared to what the Eibishter is Metzias. Like I tried to illustrate it before with this idea of quiescence, of quiet, Dmamadaka, no expression. Moed is not only Mahus of Elokus, it's a built-in Metzias. So when we appreciate that our conversation is taking place on a level of Oed versus Moed, as opposed to world versus godliness, Oed is Metzias and Moed is Mahus. So the lowest level of Oed is the Metzias of Elokus. The highest level of Oed is the Mahus of Moed. The middle level of Oed is its Mahus is still Oed, and its Metzias had been bittled by the Mahus of Moed. That's how you understand the three levels of Ein Sof. The lower level of Ein Sof reflects and represents the Eibishter, but it's only giving out the Metzias of Elokus. In other words, godliness as it can be experienced. The highest level of Oed because its whole interest is to be one with the Moed, it's Moed-like, so there's no experience. And the middle level of Oed, it has a Mahus of Oed. In other words, it has the idea of experiencing godliness, which is batal because it knows that the Moed is higher than itself. So, we have three levels of Eid Ein Sof. The lowest level of Eid Ein Sof reveals godliness and is therefore considered only Metzias HaMoed. The middle level of Eid Ein Sof is not able to reveal godliness, so its Metzias is batal, but its Mahus is still separate. And the highest level of Eid Ein Sof is the way Eid is one with Moed, its Mahus is the Mahus HaMoed. And the Rebbe now continues. And he uses different language. I'm reading now Sif Dalet. This alternative language is a little bit helpful. Okay? And the alternative language is Gilui and Geder Gilui and Eine Begeder Gilui. Revealed, could possibly be revealed, and has nothing to do with revelation. So let's read it and then we'll talk about it. And the Rebbe Rashab continues to say, Shagim al Hamadreyes, Ba'abitul De'er, the three levels of Bitul and Eir. Heim Gimel Madrege Shabe'er are not talking about the same light as if there's one light that has three levels. One, the same light on the lowest level is Metzias, on the highest level is Mahus, and the middle level is its Metzias is Batal, Mahus is still separate, but it's three different Madreges of Eid Ein Sof. What are the three different levels? Habit or the Eid Mitzad Atzmei, the lowest level of Eid, which is Batal Mitzad Atzmei, means saying it's Dveikus, it's reflecting and revealing Elikus, is Be'er Ames Labish Bekel, the light which goes into the vessel, what we usually call Mamalik Alam. The light that goes into the vessel is actually revealed in the vessel, and the vessel receives it. And in this case, the vessel is receiving a Gili of Eid Ein Sof. And then you have a Bitul the Eid, Nation Nigish Be'Mekede, the middle level, where the Eid by itself is the Metzias of Eid. But the Makir Bittles its Mahus, who Ba'Eid Shalamaylam Me'Islapshas Be'Kalim, that light is above vessels, can't go into Kalim. Ava B'Geder Islapshas. It could theoretically go into vessels. In other words, it's not Gilui, but it's B'Geder Gilui. It's not his slapshus, it's begeder slapshus. It's not actually revealed, but it could possibly be revealed. And for lack of words, we'll call this Sevav Kalaman. It's higher than a light that go into the vessels, but it's enough outside the source that in theory it has a relationship to another. And v'abitul the eir, shemitzateva haratzei v'aliyah shalali kalav b'makere. And the highest level of eir, the way eir knows the moed, and it's in the madrega of the moed because of the principle of the Baal Shem Tov, that makei misharetzei shel adam shamhu nimtza. This light not only is not revealed, it can't possibly be revealed. There's no concept of revelation. How do you say this in other words? In other words, is there any way we could make this incredibly exotic discussion at all relatable to us? And I think not only we can make it relatable to us, it's actually very simple. And in a Maamer like this, to call anything simple is a stretch, is a story, because as you know, it's not simple at all. The deal is as follows. When we speak about our relationship with Hashem, when we speak about our having a relationship with Hashem, what does the very sentence, I have a relationship, or I want a relationship, or I have a relationship with Hashem, what does it connote? What does it mean, I have a relationship with Hashem? And of course the answer is that when you say, I have a relationship with Hashem, you have to assume three things. I, Hashem, and the relationship. Hashem is the truth. We are whatever we are. If there's going to be any kind of connection between the Eibishter and us, there's going to have to be glue. There's going to have to be a bridge. That bridge presents the Eibishter to us. It brings Hashem closer to us. By bringing Hashem closer to us, it allows us to have a relationship with the Eibishter. But there's another side to that coin. And the other side to that coin is that in order for anything to act as a bridge, it has to step away from being Hashem. To use a classic term, there has to be a tzimtzum. We, as entities unto ourselves, cannot have a relationship with Hashem. It's impossible. If I'm me and he's him, the only way him and me can meet is there's something that's bringing us together. And what brings us together is called a gili, a revelation. The revelation is close enough to him to reflect him, and close enough to me to reach me. So if a revelation is reflecting Hashem but reaching me, it's less than it is as it is Hashem. And that's the first level of Oyed. The first level of Oyed is Oyed that's in a state of Gili. It's representing the Eibishter to another, to a Keli, to a world, and in this case to the person, to me, to you, to all of us. And the light of Hashem, which is representing or revealing Hashem to me and you, is Begeder, is Oyed HaMislapesh B'Keli. It's Gili, it's revealed to me and you. We know it. It's revealed to us. But in as much as it's revealed to us, it's the Metzias of what the Eibishter is. In other words, there's no way what Hashem is can reach us. Because what Hashem is unknowable. What can reach us is only a reflection of Him. And therefore, in terms of the relationship between what we know about Him, which is His light, and what He is, we call it Metzias. So if we could know Hashem, it's not Hashem we're knowing, it's only a revelation of Hashem. And a revelation of Hashem, even if it's a level of Elokus, is relative to Hashem Himself, Metzias. But there's of course another possibility. And this other possibility is altogether different and quite extraordinary. And the other possibility is that we can have a relationship with Hashem by discovering that we're one with Hashem, that Hashem is in us. On an ultimate level, which really our Maamer doesn't discuss, we don't have to bring Hashem to us. We have to find Hashem within us. Because if there was no Hashem within us, we would not exist. I've asked this question 1,000 times. What's the proof that God is in the world? What is the proof that God is in you and in me? That we exist. Because without a spark of Elokus, we would simply have no Metzias whatsoever. We would not exist at all. And therefore, there is God within us. If we could find the God within ourselves, we would have a relationship with the Eibishter. But we'd have a relationship with the Eibishter without Him being another. We'd have a relationship with the Eibishter because we are the Eibishter. In the famous Lashon, Yedaitev Avisav, you know God by being God. And that's the difference between the first level of Oyed and the third level of Oyed. The first level of Oyed knows God as another. And because it knows God as another, God is revealed to that other. And in being revealed to that other, it's fulfilling the purpose of bringing the Eibishter to the world. But in bringing the Eibishter to the world and revealing God, it has to be less than what God is by Himself, and it's therefore called Metzias and not Mahus. The highest level of Ein Sof, which is knowing God by being one with God, cannot be known so long as one is another. When you're separate from the Eibishter, you cannot know the Eibishter intimately. And when one is one with the Eibishter, and you know the Eibishter intimately, then knowing the Eibishter as the Eibishter knows Himself. That's called Mahus. So the lowest level is Hislapshus, the way godliness reaches another, which is us. And in order to do this, there has to be a tzimtzum. And we call it Metzias. The highest level is where godliness is not reaching another, but rather with another and God are one. And that is called Eine Begeder Hislapshus. Not only it's not revealed, it has no relationship with revelation. The whole idea of interaction, of A and B. There's no A, there's no B, there's only one. And the middle level is where it's called Begeder Hislapshus. Begeder Hislapshus means there's still two, and there's still a possibility of creating a bridge between A and B through the light, but for whatever reason, the light is unable to bring the revelation forward because it's in a state of bittul. And this is really a second set of terms, a second language. In other words, our Maamer discusses 3 levels of Oyed, and in page Shin Lamed, the names of these 3 levels of Oyed were: number 1, Bittul Oyed Mitzad Atzmei. Number 2, Bittul Ayedei Shenirgish Bei Makedei. And number 3, Bittul Mitzad Teva HaRatzei V'Aliyah Shabei Likolol B'Makedei. And here we have 3 more names for these same 3 levels of Oyed. The lowest level of Oyed is Oyed HaMislabesh B'Kelim. The middle level is Oyed, which is Begeder Hislapshus. And the highest Madreg is Oyed Shalamayla Begeder Hislapshus. And now we are 4 lines from the bottom of the page, and we read another set of terms. A third time language represent these 3 madregas of Ein Sof, but now we use language of Kabbalah. We gave these 3 levels of labels on page Shin Lamed, and then earlier in this paragraph, how would you say these 3 madregas in the language of Kabbalah? And the answer is Bina, Chochmah, and Kesed. Bina is where the light is going into a vessel completely, the vessel being another. In Kesed, there's no vessels at all. And Chochmah is vacillating between vessel and no vessel. Ein hamislabish bekelim u'bina. Light which goes into the vessels madrega of bina, because bebinu chibur eira makli. Because bina is the first sfira where the keli is really another, a total other, and the oid is reaching it. And as I explained before, the moment oid reaches another, that's a tzimtzum, that's a gilu, and therefore it's only metzias. Let's leave that alone. The second madrega, the level of oid, which is above actually being revealed, but could theoretically be revealed, meaning to say, a level of oid which knows the concept of another, but is not actually reaching another, that's chochmah. If you actually reach another, that's giloy, that's islapshus, that's bina. If you know about another, but you don't reach another, it's not giloy, it's not islapshus, but it's begeder giloy, begeder islapshus, that's chochmah. Then there's a light which has no relationship to another whatsoever, because there is no other. As far as that light is concerned, that's the madrega of Kesed. So in Kabbalistic language, these three levels of Eir are Bina, Chochmah, and Kesed. So we just offered a third way to describe the three madregas of Eir Ein Sof. Now, I have 2/3 of a page to read, from the top of this page until Siv Hey. And I'm not reading it at all. A good portion of this middle paragraph on page Shin Lamed Beis we read in the first shiur. But aside for that, I am not going to read this page. I'm going to finish the class. And the way I'm going to finish the class is by reminding you that in this conversation on Oir, there are 2 points of view, there are 2 perspectives. And it was discussed today, it was discussed in today's class. It was the whole foundation, the whole basis of the first class that we had on this Maamer. And it goes to the essence, it goes to the heart of understanding this Maamer. Okay? And this is the issue. We are discussing 3 levels of Eir Ein Sof. But in discussing 3 levels of Eir Ein Sof, there are 2 discussions. The first discussion, the simple discussion, is we're discussing 3 levels of Eir Ein Sof, and as much as Oir is Oir. Period. What is Oir? Dveikus. What is Oir? Gili. What does Oir do? It represents the Eibishter. In as much as Oir represents the Eibishter, there's 3 levels. The lowest level is that it reveals, the second level is that it wants to reveal but doesn't, and the highest level that it's one with the source and doesn't reveal at all. And that's more or less today's class, or the point of today's class. But it's not the point of today's Maamer. It's the point of today's class. In other words, this is very similar to the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, and doesn't underscore the novelty of this Maamer as the Rebbe teaches it. Because the way the Rebbe teaches it is a whole nother perspective. And the whole nother perspective is not 3 levels of Oir and how they're bottled to their Moir, but 3 levels of Oir and how they serve the wishes of their Moir, how they serve their Maker, they serve their Creator, how they serve Hashem. And when you speak about the second idea, the second concept of Bittul, which is not how Oir is a Metzias of Oir, and we begin to discussing, is it Giloy, is it Begeder Giloy, is not Begeder Giloy? Is it revealed, is it hidden, or is it one with the source? But in terms of how Oir fulfills the wishes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the entire issue is upside down. It's exactly the opposite. Why? Because if you asked Hashem why he created Oir, he will tell you he created Oir for the sake of Giloy. He created Oir for the sake of Tzimtzum. He created the Oir for the sake of Metzias. He created Oir for the sake of bringing him to the world. So although in the first conversation, in the simple conversation, in the basic conversation, the light which is revealed is lower than the light which is hidden, and the light which is hidden is lower than the light which is one with the source. But in the second conversation, when you talk about light fulfilling what the source wants, it's actually the other way around. The light which reveals is doing what the Eibishter wants. And the light which is hidden is not able to do what the Eibishter wants. And the light which is one with the source isn't revealing at all. And this is how this Maamer gets interesting. And this is how this Maamer becomes, so to speak, uniquely the Rebbe's. Uniquely the Rebbe's as opposed to the Maamer of the Rebbe Rasha. I'm going to leave it for now. There's a reason why I'm not continuing this conversation. I'm leaving it for the moment. Mitzvah Hashem, the next shiur is going to be discussing the 3 madreges of Oir in Avodah. It's the shiur after the next where these 2 perspectives on the 3 madreges of Oir is going to become relevant. And because we're going to have a shiur in between, let's leave it for now. In Mitzvah Hashem, when we get to it, we'll explore it further.